Look up there. It's my 360. And you know what is unique about that 360? Is it's my third 360. So if you look at my history of 360 ownership, I did the video 10 common things that you should look for when buying a 360, 10 common problems that go wrong. And I'm very familiar with the ownership of them. This one has been pretty rock solid. Both of my, all three of my 360s were actually pretty rock solid. The first one that I owned, the 360 Coupe, is now up on CoPart. Thanks again to some people flagging it on VinWiki. It's been brought to my attention that the car is no longer looking as good as it was. Now, I was very proud of that car because A, it was my first personal Ferrari I've ever owned, and B, it was in great shape. Like it was, I sold it with like 65,000 miles on it. I bought it with like 48 or 50. And I did a video. That car, when you factored in everything, cost me like $100 a month, right? When you factor in, I put $0 down. I paid every maintenance bill. I did a major service. I swapped the clutch. I put the radio in. I swapped to the Challenge grill. When you factor in all of this and amortize all of those costs over my 4 years of ownership, it came out to about $100 a month. That's nothing. I mean, it is, what, $100 a month times 48 months. It was $12,000 or $15,000 out of pocket in expenses to keep it running, plus the $50,000 I had to pay in principal payments at like $1,500 a month. So it wasn't cheap, but I got all of that principal back, and I got half of my running costs back because I bought it for $50 and sold it for $55. So that worked out really well for me. Much better than it worked out for whoever now owns it or just recently owned it, because now it's up for sale at CoPart. And my second Ferrari I sold to a close friend. He ended up having an engine noise, which Cosmo tore all the way down. I did a video on this. Tore it all the way down to the block to try to diagnose it. And I get it. It makes sense. If you have an engine noise, you don't want to go in there, put it back together, and find out it still has an engine noise. Had everything checked out. And I think he had like 2 collapsed lifters or something like that, and maybe a bad intake gasket. Really not that bad, but it's also not unheard of, and it turns into a pretty expensive job. That's part of what happens. Like you spend, as I said, you may go a year without spending anything, and then the next year you spend $10,000 to keep it running. So as long as you factor in to save about $5,000 a year to keep a 360 cranking along, you're in good shape. Now, the problem you have with the 360 that I had that's now on CoPart is the thing is shot. Like, it took a big impact in the side right behind the driver door, ripped the whole thing apart. I don't know why. I get it was a cheaper Ferrari. Like, I sold it for like 55. I mean, it probably traded in the 40s or 50s after people put more miles on it. At the end of the day, like, I hate when people, like, these wheels look perfectly fine, right? I don't think there's anything you have to do to put aftermarket wheels on it. The first thing I do when I look at these photos of the car, it looks terrible with the aftermarket wheels. I mean, it also looks terrible that they ripped the side apart, but also now I had the aftermarket stereo in it, and just so you could have a screen that had sticky buttons and everything like that. But then they start putting the amplifiers behind the seat that I noticed, and the back window looks like it was blown out. It's just, I feel bad for that car. Like, something about me is like, yeah, whatever, it was a car, it was mine, I sold it, I had it. And something else is like, but that was my first Ferrari, and you sort of want to see it continue on and go to a good home and everything like that, and not end up at CoPart smashed to bits. So I don't know, it's probably a pretty decent parts car at this point in time. I don't know the mileage on it. The photos that they did of the odometer, they didn't have the mileage in the listing. You'd have to assume it's probably got, 65, 75, 80,000 miles on it by now. So you have to adjust the value accordingly, plus all the work it's going to need to keep it going, to get it back to looking like a Ferrari. I think this car may have seen the last of its rebuilding days. Somebody may still rebuild it, but I don't know. Now it's probably a total loss on it. I don't know if I could recommend buying it. I mean, it was such a nice car. I don't know how the interior held up, how the use was, how anything held up with that car. So I can't say, sure, this is a good first Ferrari for you. But it hits me a little bit inside that, like, watching my Ferrari ownership. Now, this one I'm going to keep for a while. But watching my Ferrari ownership on my previous cars The engine that he had to repair, fixed. Sounds better than ever. Cosmo was just sent a video to him. The thing is fired up, running again. So that's terrific. He puts the test pipes on it, so that thing's going to absolutely scream. It's got tubing and a test pipe. Watching the first one go down like this, I mean, that's sort of the downside to the VinWiki stuff. It's great that VinWiki exists, but it's also the downside that you can follow your previous vehicles and you get notified of your previous vehicles and their misfortunes. So check it out. Link in the description. You want to scoop it up, you want to buy it for parts, you want to just sniff the seat because I owned it. I don't know, some of you guys are weird, but it's available. It's up for sale, and it could be yours if you've got, I'm just going to say it's going to sell for 20 grand. If you've got about 20 grand, it could be yours. We're up for ready. See you tomorrow. So you guys are familiar with my other company, Adventure Drives, right? Well, this year we've got 2 trips coming up. One, which is starting in Seattle and ending in Jackson Hole in July. That's going up through the Canadian Rockies, coming down through Banff, Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, and Grand Teton National Park. It's going to be phenomenal. Also, we're going to be going to Scotland in October. We're going to be doing Scotch distilleries, playing golf at St. Andrews if you want to do that, walking around, seeing lakes, waterfalls, driving the North Coast. It's going to be an amazing trip. Prices start as low as $2,500 per person for the shorter trip in Scotland, about double that for the longer trip in July. If you're interested in going, check out the link in the description.